In 1975, in a quiet hospital room, a somber atmosphere enveloped the labored breaths of a legend. Moe Howard, the strict captain, the man whose bowl haircut had become the trademark of the Three Stooges, was facing the final battle of his life, terminal lung cancer. At nearly 80 years old, the man who had once made millions of audiences roar with laughter through slaps and scowling expressions was now reduced to a frail, small old man beneath a hospital blanket. No more the signature jet black hair, no more the commanding presence of a leader, only deeply sunken yet sharp eyes remained, holding within them a vast treasury of memories from a bygone era of entertainment. Those close to him recounted that throughout his career, Moe had always been the one to keep every secret, the shield protecting the group's image before the public. Yet, just 1 week before closing his eyes, he decided to break that long-held silence. Why did Moe choose this moment to reveal the painful truths about Curley, the talented younger brother, and also the greatest sorrow of his life? It was not an attempt to accuse or to shock, but rather a release for his own soul after decades of carrying the group's legacy on his shoulders. He wanted the world to know that behind the roaring laughter they brought were silent tears, and behind the image of the fool, Curley was a man who had sacrificed himself to exhaustion for the sake of art. Before becoming icons of world cinema, they were simply brothers in a large Jewish family in Brooklyn, New York. Moe and Curley, along with their brother Shemp, were born with artistic blood in their veins. Moe, with his decisive nature and organizational mind, was always the one to lead his brothers. He saw the potential in Curley's innocence and Shemp's wit to shape them into a one-of-a-kind comedy group. Their career began on the gritty vaudeville stages, where they had to learn how to win over audiences at any cost. When they stepped into cinema under the name The Three Stooges, they created a revolution in slapstick comedy. The blows, the lightning-fast exchanges, and their extreme performance style turned them into a money-printing machine for the studio. The peak of their career was tied to the presence of Curley. Though he was the youngest, Curley was the soul, the magnet that drew audiences with his boundless creativity. He did not need elaborate scripts. A single wink, a dance, or bizarre sounds were enough to make an entire theater erupt. Together they created hundreds of short films, becoming companions to every American family throughout the Great Depression, bringing laughter to ease the pain of an entire generation. Yet few knew that the very name Stooges, those who are ordered around, would come to define their lives like a fateful curse for their later careers. Between strained breaths on his hospital bed, Moe Howard began to speak of his brother in a trembling yet sorrowful voice. To the world, Curley was a naturally gifted comic genius, a man with bizarre expressions and the unmistakable nuke laugh. But to Moe, every time he saw his brother on screen, he saw a soul in captivity. The first and most painful sacrifice was his appearance. Moe recalled the day Curley agreed to join the group. He had to shave off his proud blonde hair and mustache to become a ridiculous, bald-headed character. For a sensitive man like Curley, losing his hair was not just a change in appearance, but a loss of his own confidence. Moe revealed that Curley always felt ugly and laughable. Whenever he looked in the mirror, he did not see a star, but merely a toy for the amusement of others. That sensitivity made Curley extremely fragile. Behind the wild antics on screen was a man so shy he feared crowds. Curley constantly doubted his own energy, always questioning whether audiences laughed because of his talent or were simply laughing at his foolishness. It was this insecurity that led Curley into emotional missteps. Moe recounted bitterly his brother's short-lived marriages. The women came and went, many of them only seeking to profit from the wealth Curley had worked so hard to earn. They loved the clown on screen, not the lonely man behind the makeup. After each breakup, Curley sank deeper into solitude, and instead of finding comfort, he tried even harder to play the role of the fool, to hide the wounds bleeding within him. When speaking of their years working at Columbia Pictures, Moe's eyes flashed with a mixture of anger and helplessness. He called it a soulless money-making machine, where people were nothing more than replaceable gears. Although the Three Stooges brought enormous profits to the studio, the Howard brothers and Larry Fine were treated no differently than low-level workers. They were drained by an intense filming schedule, while the pay they received was meager, utterly disproportionate to the sweat and even blood they had shed on set. Moe choked up as he recalled the worst moment of his life as an older brother. It was in the mid-1940s when Curley's health began to collapse after a series of minor strokes. On set, Curley staggered, his eyes vacant. He began to forget even the simplest lines, and his facial muscles no longer responded as they should. Instead of stopping to care for an exhausted legend, the directors and producers of the time only shouted and forced Curley to complete the scenes at all costs to meet the schedule. It was torture, Moe whispered, his frail hands gripping the edge of the hospital bed. There were scenes where, according to the script, I had to slap Curley, had to hit his head. Do you understand that pain? I had to strike my own brother while seeing him unable to stand steady, while deep down I just wanted to scream, to hold him tight and take him to the hospital immediately. But in that harsh era, Moe had no other choice. He had to maintain the role of the cruel older brother on screen to provide for the entire family, for every member of the group. Every slap on screen was a stab into Moe's heart in real life. The cruelty of the film industry had turned sacred brotherhood into a cheap entertainment tool, and when Curley could no longer produce laughter, they were ready to discard him like a broken toy. The torment of being an accomplice in the exploitation of his own brother haunted Moe until his final breaths. On his hospital bed, Moe's voice softened as he spoke about the period when Curley began to destroy himself. He recounted that when the physical pain and the emptiness in his soul became overwhelming, Curley turned to alcohol and all-night parties as a kind of anesthetic to numb his senses. Curley did not want to face the reality that he was growing old, falling ill, and gradually losing his ability to make people laugh. Moe admitted that during those years, he had taken on the role of an extreme, strict father. He tried to control everything in his brother's life, from spending habits to eating, even friendships. Moe did it out of love, wanting to pull Curley out of the mire, but ironically, that very strictness built an invisible wall between them. Curley began to fear his brother, fear Moe's judgmental gaze, and the more he feared, the more he escaped into intoxication. The worst period came when Curley had to leave the group due to complete physical collapse. Describing the final years of his younger brother, Moe could not hold back his tears. It was cruel to witness the funniest man in the world confined to a wheelchair, unable to speak clearly and sometimes unable to recognize his own family. The most painful part was the forgetting. Even before Curley passed away, a portion of the audience had already begun to forget him. They remembered only a character on screen, not a human being fading away in care facilities. Moe had to watch his brother slowly disappear, not only physically but also in reputation, while he himself still had to apply makeup, step onto the stage, and play a resilient Moe Howard as if nothing had ever happened. That helplessness was a form of punishment Moe carried for the rest of his life. For 23 years after Curley left the world in 1952, not a single night brought Moe Howard a complete, restful sleep. In the silent darkness of his hospital room in 1975, he confessed that his brother's face always appeared in his dreams, not with a mischievous smile, but with the exhausted, pleading eyes from that day on set. The question, if I had let him rest sooner, would he have lived a few more years, became a life sentence tormenting the soul of the aging leader. Moe blamed himself for prioritizing work too much, for worrying excessively about the so-called responsibility to the group, and in doing so, ignoring the silent cries for help from his own flesh and blood. He regretted playing the role of the harsh brother for too long, even after the cameras had stopped rolling. I spent my whole life slapping him on screen, but I forgot to hold him tightly more often in real life, Moe whispered, his voice choked with emotion. The truth about their brotherhood was something sacred, yet deeply tragic. Though on screen they fought and insulted each other to bring joy to others, in real life, Moe loved Curley more than anything in the world. The harsh words and controlling actions Moe once displayed were, in truth, a desperate resistance against a ruthless film industry that had exploited his brother. Moe's self-reproach in his final hours was not only the pain of losing a loved one, but also the pain of a protector who had failed to shield the one he loved most. He pleaded for forgiveness from his departed brother, a belated prayer sent into the void before he himself stepped toward eternity. In the final days of May 1975, the fading daylight filtered through the hospital window, casting long shadows across Moe Howard's still face. In his last lucid moments before falling into a deep coma, it was said that Moe no longer spoke of contracts or unfinished projects. He softly called the names of his brothers, Shemp, Larry, and especially Curley, as if they were waiting for him somewhere beyond the curtain of fame. Moe Howard's passing just 1 week later closed the era of the Three Stooges, but his late confessions left behind a deeply moving message for future generations. He wanted audiences, when looking at the screen, not to see only the amusing slaps or the absurd situations, but to remember Curley as a true artist, a man who sacrificed his hair, his appearance, his health, and even his inner peace in exchange for laughter in a world already burdened with sorrow. The conclusion of the Howard brothers' journey does not lie in bronze statues or stars on the Walk of Fame, but in the belated empathy of the public. When Moe drew his final breath, it was believed that he had finally been able to shed the mask of the harsh captain and return to being the gentle brother of Harry and Jerry, Curley's real name. Somewhere beyond the reach of ruthless studios and relentless pain, they could once again perform their comedy together, but this time with genuine smiles, no longer hiding tears behind makeup. Their legacy, therefore, is not only laughter, but also a lesson in sacrifice and unbreakable brotherhood, living on in the hearts of those who value the human truths behind the stage lights. We have laughed with them for decades, but perhaps today is the first time we cry with them. What do you think about Curley's sacrifices and Moe's lifelong torment? Leave a tribute to these legends in the comments below. If this story touched your heart, do not forget to press like and subscribe to explore more hidden stories of Hollywood with us. Thank you for listening.